The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Buckingham Palace as Kate Williams hurried through the servants' corridor. Her black shoes clicked rhythmically against the polished stone, echoing in the empty hallway. As a junior lady-in-waiting to the Queen, Kate had grown accustomed to the early morning routines that kept the royal household running smoothly. Today felt different somehow, though she couldn't quite put her finger on why. Kate had been working at the palace for 3 years now, ever since she graduated from Oxford with a degree in art history. Her position wasn't glamorous by any means, but it paid well and gave her access to some of the world's most incredible artwork and historical artifacts. She had always been fascinated by history, particularly the hidden stories that lurked behind famous faces and grand buildings. The palace, with its centuries of secrets, was like a living museum to her. As she walked, Kate clutched a folder containing the Queen's morning correspondence. Her supervisor, Mrs. Hartwell, had specifically instructed her to deliver these letters to the Queen's private secretary before 8 o'clock. Kate glanced at her watch nervously. It was already 7:45, and she still had to navigate through 2 more corridors to reach the secretary's office. The palace was unusually quiet this morning. Most of the senior staff wouldn't arrive for another hour, and the royal family was still in their private quarters. Kate enjoyed these peaceful moments before the day's chaos began. She could almost imagine what life was like here hundreds of years ago when kings and queens walked these same halls, making decisions that would shape nations. Lost in her thoughts, Kate didn't notice the loose edge of the Persian runner that stretched along the corridor floor. Her foot caught the fabric, and she stumbled forward, trying to regain her balance. The folder flew from her hands, scattering the Queen's letters across the marble floor like autumn leaves in the wind. "Oh no!" Kate whispered, dropping to her knees to gather the scattered papers. Her heart raced as she imagined Mrs. Hartwell's reaction if she discovered that the Queen's private correspondence had been strewn across a public corridor. Some of the letters bore official government seals, while others looked more personal in nature. As Kate reached for a letter that had slid under a nearby table, she felt a sharp pain shoot through her chest. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. It felt as if someone had wrapped a tight band around her rib cage and was slowly tightening it with each breath she took. Kate tried to stand, but her legs felt weak and unsteady. The pain in her chest intensified, spreading down her left arm like liquid fire. She recognized these symptoms from her first aid training, though she had never imagined she would experience them herself at only 25 years old. Her breathing became shallow and rapid as panic began to set in. The corridor started to spin around her. The ornate paintings on the walls seemed to blur together into a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes. Kate reached out desperately, trying to find something solid to hold on to, but her vision was growing darker by the second. The last thing she remembered was the cold touch of marble against her cheek as she collapsed onto the palace floor. Meanwhile, 2 floors above, in the security control room, Guard Thomas Mitchell was beginning his morning shift. At 32, Thomas had been working palace security for 8 years. He was known among his colleagues for his attention to detail and his ability to spot potential problems before they escalated. Thomas took pride in his work, knowing that the safety of the royal family and palace staff depended on guards like him remaining vigilant at all times. Thomas settled into his chair in front of the bank of security monitors that displayed feeds from cameras throughout the palace. Each screen showed a different area: hallways, staircases, courtyards, and entrance points. It was routine work, but Thomas never allowed himself to become complacent. He had seen too many security breaches happen because guards had let their attention wander for just a few moments. As Thomas scanned the monitors, his eye caught movement on camera 7, which covered the servants' corridor on the ground floor. A young woman was walking quickly through the hallway carrying what appeared to be a folder. Thomas recognized her immediately as Kate Williams, one of the junior lady-in-waiting staff members. He had seen her many times during his patrols, and she had always struck him as professional and dedicated to her duties. Thomas watched as Kate stumbled and dropped her papers. He leaned forward, expecting to see her quickly gather everything and continue on her way. Instead, he witnessed something that made his blood run cold. Kate suddenly clutched her chest, swayed unsteadily, and collapsed to the floor, completely motionless. Without hesitation, Thomas activated the emergency alert system and grabbed his radio. "Medical emergency in Corridor 7A, he announced, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. "Female staff member down, appears to be unconscious." "I'm responding immediately." Thomas knew that the palace medical team would need several minutes to reach the scene, possibly longer depending on where they were located in the massive building. Every second could be critical in a medical emergency. He grabbed the portable defibrillator from the security station and ran toward the stairs, taking them 3 at a time. The palace corridors that Thomas normally patrolled at a measured pace now seemed endless as he raced toward Kate's location. His footsteps echoed loudly in the quiet morning air, and he hoped desperately that he wouldn't be too late to help. Thomas had received extensive medical training as part of his security certification, but he had never had to use those skills in a real emergency situation. When Thomas finally reached Corridor 7A, he found Kate lying unconscious on the marble floor, surrounded by scattered papers. Her face was pale, and her breathing appeared shallow but steady. Thomas quickly knelt beside her and checked her pulse, which was rapid but present. He gently positioned her in the recovery position and used his radio to update the medical team on her condition. As Thomas waited for the medical team to arrive, he began gathering the scattered letters that surrounded Kate's unconscious form. He wanted to clear the area and preserve her dignity while ensuring that no confidential royal correspondence was left lying around where unauthorized personnel might see it. As he collected the papers, one particular envelope caught his attention. The envelope was made of cream-colored paper with an unusual watermark that Thomas had never seen before. Unlike the other official correspondence, this envelope bore no government seals or royal insignia. Instead, it was marked with a small, hand-drawn symbol in the corner that looked like a crown surrounded by a crescent moon. The envelope was addressed simply to Her Majesty, in elegant handwriting that appeared to be quite old. Thomas hesitated for a moment, knowing that he shouldn't examine royal correspondence. However, the envelope was unsealed, and a portion of the letter inside was visible. What he could see made him question everything he thought he knew about the palace and its history. The visible text mentioned something about the hidden chamber beneath the throne room and secrets that must never be revealed to the public. Before Thomas could read any further, he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. The palace medical team, led by Dr. Falls, Sarah Chen, came rushing down the corridor with their equipment. Thomas quickly slipped the mysterious envelope into his jacket pocket and stepped back to give the medical professionals room to work. Dr. Chen immediately began examining Kate, checking her vital signs and asking Thomas questions about what he had witnessed. "Her pulse is stabilizing," Dr. Chen announced after a few minutes of assessment. "It appears she may have had a panic attack or possibly a mild cardiac episode brought on by stress. We need to get her to the medical wing for a proper examination." As the medical team carefully loaded Kate onto a stretcher, Thomas found himself thinking about the mysterious letter in his pocket. The timing of Kate's collapse and his discovery of this strange correspondence seemed too coincidental to ignore. Thomas had always been skeptical of conspiracy theories, but something about this situation felt different. The letter seemed to suggest that there were aspects of the palace's history that were being deliberately concealed from the public, and possibly even from most of the palace staff. Thomas followed the medical team as they transported Kate to the palace medical wing. He told himself that he was simply doing his job by ensuring that all areas remained secure. But in truth, he was worried about Kate's condition. During his years of working at the palace, Thomas had developed a protective instinct toward all the staff members, regardless of their rank or position. Kate had always seemed kind and hardworking, and Thomas hoped that whatever had caused her collapse wasn't serious. As they reached the medical wing, Dr. Chen turned to Thomas. "Thank you for responding so quickly," she said. "Your fast action may have prevented this situation from becoming much more serious. We'll keep her under observation for the rest of the day, but I expect she'll make a full recovery." Thomas nodded and watched as Kate was wheeled into the examination room. Even unconscious, she looked peaceful, and some color had returned to her cheeks. Thomas felt a wave of relief wash over him, but his mind kept returning to the letter hidden in his jacket pocket. He knew he should report it to his supervisor immediately, but something held him back. Instead, Thomas decided to conduct some discreet research on his own. If the letter was legitimate, it could contain information that would be of great historical significance. If it was some kind of hoax or prank, then no harm would be done by investigating it privately before involving the palace administration. Thomas had always been curious about the palace's history, and this seemed like an opportunity to uncover something that might have been hidden for decades or even centuries. As Thomas returned to his security station, He couldn't shake the feeling that Kate's collapse had been the beginning of something much larger than a simple medical emergency. The mysterious letters seemed to be calling to him, promising answers to questions he didn't even know he had been asking. Thomas settled back into his chair in front of the security monitors, but for the first time in his 8-year career, his attention was focused on something other than the safety and security of the palace. The letter in his pocket seemed to burn against his chest like a secret that demanded to be uncovered. 3 days had passed since Kate's collapse in the corridor, and she was finally feeling strong enough to return to work.
Doctor, good night.
Chen had diagnosed her with severe exhaustion and stress-related heart palpitations, recommending that she take things easier and maintain a better work-life balance. Kate appreciated the concern, but she was eager to get back to her duties at the palace. The time away had given her too much opportunity to think about what had happened, and she preferred to stay busy rather than dwell on her moment of weakness. As Kate walked through the same corridor where she had collapsed, she noticed that everything had been cleaned and organized perfectly. There was no sign that anything unusual had ever happened there. The Persian runner had been secured properly, and the marble floor gleamed under the morning light streaming through the tall windows. Kate felt a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude as she remembered how helpless she had felt lying on this very spot. Mrs. Hartwell had been surprisingly understanding about the incident, though she had made it clear that Kate needed to be more careful with the Queen's correspondence in the future. All of the scattered letters had been recovered and delivered to their proper destinations, though Kate couldn't remember exactly what had happened to them after she collapsed. The whole experience remained somewhat hazy in her memory, like trying to recall details from a vivid dream. Kate was arranging flowers in the green drawing room when Thomas Mitchell appeared in the doorway. She recognized him immediately as the guard who had found her unconscious, though they had never actually spoken before. Thomas was taller than she had realized, with kind brown eyes and an earnest expression that made him seem both professional and approachable. "Excuse me, Miss Williams," Thomas said politely, stepping into the room. "I wanted to check on how you were feeling after your medical emergency the other day. I was the one who found you in the corridor." Kate felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Oh, you're the guard who helped me," she said, setting down the vase of roses she had been arranging. "I'm so sorry you had to see me in that condition. I've never had anything like that happen before." Thomas smiled reassuringly. "Please don't apologize. Medical emergencies can happen to anyone at any time. I'm just glad I was monitoring that area and able to respond quickly." "Dr. G60C. Chen said you're expected to make a full recovery." "Yes. She said it was probably just stress and exhaustion," Kate replied. "I've been working some long hours lately trying to prove myself in this position. Sometimes I forget to eat properly or get enough sleep." Thomas nodded sympathetically, but Kate noticed that he seemed somewhat nervous or distracted. He kept glancing around the room as if making sure they were alone, and his hands fidgeted with something in his jacket pocket. Kate wondered if there was something more he wanted to tell her. "Miss Williams," Thomas said finally, lowering his voice, "I hope you won't think this is inappropriate, but I found something when I was cleaning up the papers that scattered when you fell. Something that I think you should see before I report it to my supervisors." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. She had assumed that all of the Queen's correspondence had been recovered and properly handled. The thought that something might have been overlooked filled her with dread. If confidential royal documents had gone missing on her watch, it could mean the end of her career at the palace. "What kind of something?" Kate asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas looked around the room once more to ensure they were completely alone, then pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Kate immediately recognized the cream-colored paper and elegant handwriting, though she couldn't remember seeing this particular piece of correspondence before. The envelope bore a strange symbol in the corner that looked like a crown surrounded by a crescent moon. "This was mixed in with the Queen's regular mail," Thomas explained. "But it doesn't look like any official government correspondence I've ever seen. The paper is different, and that symbol doesn't match any royal insignia I recognize. I thought you might know something about it since you handle the Queen's private letters." Kate took the envelope with trembling hands. The paper felt unusually thick and expensive, with a texture that reminded her of historical documents she had studied in university. The watermark was unlike anything used by the current royal stationers, and the ink appeared to have been applied with an old-fashioned fountain pen rather than modern printing techniques. "I don't remember seeing this before," Kate said honestly. but I handle dozens of letters every day, and some of the older correspondence can look quite different from modern documents. What's inside? Thomas hesitated for a moment before responding. I only read a small portion before the medical team arrived, he admitted. But what I saw mentioned something about a hidden chamber beneath the throne room. It talked about secrets that were never supposed to be revealed to the public. Kate felt her heart begin to race again, though this time it was from excitement rather than medical distress. Her background in art history had always made her fascinated by hidden aspects of royal palaces and the secret passages that were often built into these ancient buildings. The possibility that there might be undiscovered chambers beneath Buckingham Palace was incredibly intriguing. Do you think it could be legitimate? Kate asked, carefully opening the envelope to examine the letter inside. The letter was written on matching cream-colored paper in the same elegant handwriting as the address. The ink had faded slightly with age, giving the document an authentic historical appearance. Kate began to read aloud in a hushed voice. Your Majesty, as the keeper of the ancient secrets, I feel compelled to remind you of the chamber that lies beneath the throne room, accessible through the passage behind the portrait of King Charles II. Within this chamber rest artifacts and documents that tell the true story of the crown's most closely guarded mysteries. The key to the chamber has been passed down through generations of trusted servants, hidden within the binding of the illuminated manuscript in the royal library. Should anything happen to me, this knowledge must not die with me, for there are those who seek to expose these secrets for their own gain. Kate and Thomas looked at each other in amazement. If this letter was genuine, it suggested that there was an entire secret chamber beneath the palace that contained historical artifacts and documents unknown to the public. The letter was signed simply E.M., with no additional identification or date. This is incredible, Kate whispered. If this is real, it could be one of the most significant historical discoveries in centuries. But it could also be an elaborate hoax designed to embarrass the royal family or cause security concerns. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly what I've been thinking for the past 3 days. I know I should report this to my supervisors immediately, but I wanted to get your opinion first. You know more about historical documents than I do. Kate studied the letter more carefully, using her art history training to examine the paper, ink, and handwriting style. Everything about the document seemed authentic to her educated eye, but she knew that skilled forgers could create convincing replicas of historical documents. The only way to determine the letter's authenticity would be through careful investigation. The handwriting style appears to be from the late 18th or early 19th century, Kate observed. The paper and ink also seemed consistent with that time period, but we would need to conduct proper tests to verify its authenticity. Thomas was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing his options. What if we tried to investigate this ourselves before involving the palace administration? He suggested. If it turns out to be a hoax, then no harm is done. But if it's legitimate, we could be the ones to uncover one of the palace's greatest secrets. Kate felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect of conducting their own investigation. Her academic background had always made her dream of making a significant historical discovery, and this could be her chance. At the same time, she was aware that investigating palace secrets without proper authorization could put both of their careers at risk. It would be incredibly dangerous, Kate said slowly. If we're caught conducting unauthorized investigations, we could both lose our jobs and possibly face legal consequences. The royal family takes their privacy and security very seriously. Thomas nodded in understanding. I know it's a risk, he acknowledged, but I've been thinking about this for 3 days straight, and I can't shake the feeling that this letter is genuine. What if we miss the chance to uncover something truly important just because we were too afraid to take a calculated risk? Kate looked at the letter again, studying the mysterious symbol in the corner. The crown and crescent moon design seemed to call to her, promising answers to questions she didn't even know how to ask. Her rational mind told her to report the letter immediately and let the proper authorities handle any investigation. But her heart was telling her that this was the opportunity of a lifetime. If we were to investigate this, Kate said carefully, we would need to be extremely careful and systematic about it. We couldn't afford to make any mistakes or leave any evidence of what we were doing. Thomas's eyes lit up with excitement. I have access to the security systems and can monitor for other staff members in the areas we would need to investigate. And my shift schedule gives me several hours of quiet time when most of the palace is empty. Kate thought about her own schedule and access privileges. As a lady-in-waiting, she had clearance to enter most areas of the palace, including some of the historical sections that were not open to the public. Her knowledge of art history and historical documents could be invaluable in determining whether any artifacts they might find were authentic. The letter mentions a portrait of King Charles II, Kate said, thinking aloud. I know there are several portraits of him throughout the palace, but there's a particularly famous one in the blue drawing room. It's been hanging in the same location for over 200 years. Thomas made a mental note of the location. And it mentions an illuminated manuscript in the Royal Library that supposedly contains a hidden key. Do you have access to the library? Kate nodded. I often deliver documents to the Royal Librarian, so I'm familiar with the layout and security procedures. But we would need to be very careful about examining any rare manuscripts without proper authorization. As they continued to discuss the possibilities, Kate found herself becoming more and more convinced that they should pursue their investigation. The academic in her was fascinated by the historical implications, while the adventurous side of her personality was excited by the prospect of uncovering hidden secrets. There's something else we should consider, Thomas said thoughtfully. If this letter is genuine, then someone else knows about these secrets. The letter mentions people who might seek to expose this information for their own gain. We might not be the only ones looking for this hidden chamber. Kate felt a chill at the thought that they might be competing with others who had less noble intentions. If there really were valuable historical artifacts hidden beneath the palace, there would undoubtedly be people willing to steal or exploit them for profit. That's all the more reason why we should investigate this ourselves, Kate said with growing determination. If we can find and document whatever is hidden down there, we can ensure that it's properly preserved and protected. Thomas smiled at her enthusiasm. So you're willing to take the risk? Kate looked at the letter one more time, then folded it carefully and handed it back to Thomas. I think we have a responsibility to investigate this, she said. If we ignore it and something happens to these potential artifacts, we'll regret it for the rest of our lives. Thomas tucked the letter back into his jacket pocket. Then we're partners in this investigation, he said, extending his hand to Kate. Kate shook his hand firmly, feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Partners, she agreed. But we need to establish some ground rules to protect ourselves and the palace. Over the next hour, Kate and Thomas developed a careful plan for their investigation. They would begin by examining the portrait of King Charles II to look for any signs of a hidden passage. If they found evidence to support the letter's claims, they would then investigate the Royal Library to search for the illuminated manuscript mentioned in the letter. They agreed to conduct their investigation during Thomas's night shifts when the palace was mostly empty, and the chances of being discovered were minimal. Kate would use her access privileges to enter the areas they needed to investigate, while Thomas would monitor the security systems to ensure they weren't caught by other guards or palace staff. As their meeting came to an end, Kate felt a sense of purpose that she hadn't experienced since starting her job at the palace. For the first time, she felt like she was about to do something that could make a real difference, something that could contribute to historical knowledge and preservation. Thomas seemed equally energized by their plan. I'll review the security schedules and identify the best times for us to conduct our investigation, he said. How soon do you think we could start? Kate considered her own work schedule and commitments. I could probably arrange to stay late tomorrow evening, she suggested. If you're working the night shift, that might give us our first opportunity. Thomas nodded in agreement. Tomorrow it is, he said. I have a good feeling about this, Kate. I think we're going to discover something amazing. As Thomas left the green drawing room, Kate returned to her flower arrangements with a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in years. The roses seemed brighter somehow, and even the routine task of organizing the Queen's correspondence took on new meaning. Kate couldn't help but wonder what secrets were waiting to be discovered beneath the very floors she walked on every day. The mystery that had begun with her collapse in the hallway was about to become the adventure of a lifetime. 3. The following evening, Kate found herself standing outside the blue drawing room at 11:30, her heart pounding with nervous excitement. She had told Mrs. Hartwell that she needed to work late to catch up on some correspondence that had fallen behind during her absence, which wasn't entirely untrue. Kate had indeed spent the earlier part of the evening completing her regular duties, but now she was about to embark on something far more adventurous than organizing the Queen's mail. Thomas appeared at the end of the corridor, moving quietly in his security uniform. He carried a small bag of equipment including a flashlight, measuring tape, and some basic tools that might be needed if they discovered any hidden mechanisms or passages. Kate was impressed by his thoroughness and attention to detail, qualities that would be essential for their investigation. The evening shift supervisor is making his rounds on the opposite side of the palace, Thomas whispered as he approached Kate. We should have at least an hour before anyone comes through this area. The security cameras in this corridor are on a 15-minute rotation, so we'll have brief windows when we won't be visible. Kate nodded, grateful for Thomas's expertise in palace security procedures. She used her key card to unlock the blue drawing room, and they slipped inside quietly. The room was magnificent even in the dim lighting that filtered through the tall windows from the courtyard outside. Ornate furniture and priceless artwork filled the space, creating an atmosphere of elegance and history that never failed to impress Kate. The portrait of King Charles II hung in its traditional place above the marble fireplace. The painting depicted the monarch in elaborate royal robes, with a confident expression that had watched over this room for more than 2 centuries. Kate had passed this portrait countless times during her 3 years at the palace, but tonight she was seeing it with completely new eyes. It's larger than I expected, Thomas observed, studying the massive gilt frame that surrounded the painting. If there's a passage behind it, the mechanism to open it would have to be quite sophisticated to support that weight. Kate approached the portrait carefully, using her small flashlight to examine the frame and surrounding wall. The painting appeared to be mounted securely against the wall, with no obvious hinges or moving parts. However, as Kate looked more closely, she noticed some subtle differences in the wallpaper pattern around the edges of the frame. Thomas, look at this, Kate said quietly, pointing to an area where the wallpaper seemed slightly newer than the rest of the wall. This section has been repaired or replaced at some point. You can see where the pattern doesn't quite match up perfectly. Thomas examined the area Kate had indicated, running his fingers carefully along the edge of the frame. You're right, he confirmed. And if you look closely, there are small scratches in the wall here that could be from the frame moving against it over time. Kate felt a surge of excitement as they found more evidence that supported the mysterious letter. She began examining the portrait itself more carefully, looking for any symbols or clues that might indicate how to activate a hidden passage. The painting was exquisitely detailed, showing King Charles II in a pose that had been carefully designed to convey royal authority and power. As Kate studied the king's clothing and accessories, she noticed something that made her gasp softly. Painted into the elaborate decoration of the king's crown was a small symbol that looked remarkably similar to the crown and crescent moon design from the mysterious letter. The symbol was so subtly incorporated into the artwork that it would be virtually impossible to notice unless someone was specifically looking for it. Thomas, look at the crown in the painting, Kate whispered excitedly. Do you see that small symbol worked into the decorative elements? Thomas followed Kate's gaze and saw immediately what she was referring to. The crown and crescent moon symbol was painted in gold leaf, making it blend seamlessly with the other ornate details of the royal crown. It was clearly intentional rather than coincidental, providing strong evidence that the letter and the portrait were connected. That can't be a coincidence, Thomas said in amazement. The letter specifically mentioned this portrait, and now we find the same symbol that was on the envelope worked into the painting itself. Kate began examining the symbol more closely, wondering if it might also serve as some kind of activation mechanism. She gently pressed on the area of the frame closest to the painted symbol, and was surprised to feel a slight give in what should have been solid wood and plaster. I think there's something here, Kate said, applying slightly more pressure to the area. This section of the frame seems to be designed to move. Thomas positioned himself next to Kate and helped her press on the section of frame. After a moment of resistance, they felt and heard a soft click, followed by the sound of well-oiled mechanisms beginning to move. The massive portrait began to swing slowly away from the wall, revealing a dark opening behind it. Kate and Thomas looked at each other in amazement. The hidden passage was real, exactly as described in the mysterious letter. The opening was about 3 feet wide and 6 feet tall, large enough for a person to pass through comfortably. Beyond the opening, they could see stone steps leading downward into darkness. I can't believe this is really happening, Kate whispered, shining her flashlight into the passage. The stone steps appeared to be very old, carved from the same type of material used in the palace's foundation. The walls of the passage were made of ancient brick, suggesting that this hidden route had been built when the original palace was constructed. Thomas checked his watch and the security rotation schedule. "We still have about 40 minutes before the next patrol comes through this area," he reported. "If we're going to explore this passage, we need to do it quickly and carefully." Kate felt a moment of hesitation as she looked into the dark passage. Once they crossed this threshold, they would be entering completely unknown territory. There was no telling what they might find down there or whether it would be safe to explore. At the same time, the opportunity to discover something that had been hidden for centuries was too exciting to pass up. "Let's do this," Kate said with determination, stepping toward the opening. "But we stay together and turn back at the first sign of any danger." Thomas nodded in agreement and followed Kate into the passage. The stone steps were worn smooth by age but appeared to be structurally sound. As they descended, Kate noticed that the walls were carved with various symbols and inscriptions, some of which appeared to be quite old while others seemed more recent. After descending about 20 steps, Kate and Thomas found themselves in a narrow corridor that stretched away into the darkness. The corridor was lined with more ancient brick, and the floor was paved with stone blocks that had been fitted together with remarkable precision. The air was cool and surprisingly fresh, suggesting that there was some kind of ventilation system that kept the underground space from becoming stagnant. As they walked through the corridor, Kate noticed several doorways leading off to the sides. Most of these were sealed with heavy wooden doors that appeared to be locked, but one doorway about halfway down the corridor stood open, revealing a larger chamber beyond. "This must be the chamber mentioned in the letter," Thomas said as they approached the open doorway. "The one that supposedly contains artifacts and documents about the crown's secrets." Kate shined her flashlight into the chamber and gasped at what she saw. The room was larger than she had expected, probably about 20 feet square, with a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into shadows above their heads. Along the walls were wooden shelves and cabinets filled with books, documents, and various objects that glinted in the flashlight beam. As Kate and Thomas entered the chamber, they could see that it had been arranged like a private study or archive. There were several desks covered with papers and writing materials, suggesting that someone had used this space regularly for research or correspondence. The walls were decorated with maps, portraits, and other artwork that appeared to be quite old and valuable. Thomas approached one of the desks and examined the papers scattered across its surface. "These documents look like they could be several hundred years old," he observed. "Some of them appear to be letters, while others look like official government documents or financial records." Kate was drawn to the bookshelves that lined one wall of the chamber. The volumes appeared to be a mixture of historical texts, personal journals, and official records. Many of the books were bound in fine leather with gold lettering on their spines, indicating that they were valuable and important documents. As Kate examined the books more closely, she found several that dealt with royal genealogy and succession. One volume in particular caught her attention because it contained detailed family trees and biographical information about members of the royal family that she had never seen in any official histories. "Thomas, you need to see this," Kate called out, opening the genealogy book to a page that showed the family tree of King George III. According to this book, King George had a son who was never acknowledged publicly. The entry says that this son was raised in secret and given a different name to protect the royal family from scandal. Thomas left the desk he had been examining and joined Kate by the bookshelf. The information in the genealogy book was stunning in its implications. If accurate, it suggested that there were branches of the royal family tree that had been deliberately concealed from public knowledge. "Look at this entry," Thomas said, pointing to a notation beside the secret son's name. It says he was given the name Edward Morrison and was provided with a substantial inheritance that was managed through a private trust. The initials E.M. are marked next to his name. Kate felt a chill of realization. E.M. Those were the initials on the letter that led us here, she said. If Edward Morrison was a secret son of King George III, then he would have had access to royal secrets that were never meant to be public knowledge. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. And if he was concerned about these secrets being exposed after his death, he might have written that letter to ensure that future generations would know about this hidden chamber and its contents. Kate continued examining the books and documents, finding more and more evidence of royal secrets that had been carefully concealed over the centuries. There were financial records showing payments to illegitimate children, correspondence about political arrangements that had never been made public, and even documents that suggested certain historical events had been deliberately misrepresented in official records. One document that particularly caught Kate's attention was a detailed map of the palace that showed numerous hidden passages and secret rooms that were not included in any modern architectural plans. The map indicated that the chamber they were currently exploring was just one small part of an extensive network of concealed spaces throughout the building. "This is incredible," Kate said, studying the map carefully. "According to this, there are secret passages connecting almost every major room in the palace. Some of these passages even lead to external buildings and provide hidden escape routes." Thomas examined the map with great interest, thinking about the security implications of these hidden passages. If these passages still exist and are accessible, they could represent significant security vulnerabilities, he observed. There could be people moving through the palace without being detected by our modern security systems. As they continued exploring the chamber, Kate and Thomas found numerous other artifacts and documents that provided fascinating insights into royal history. There were personal letters between monarchs and their secret advisors, financial records of covert political activities, and even artwork that had been thought lost for centuries. One particularly intriguing discovery was a collection of photographs and documents related to the Second World War that had never been included in official historical records. These materials suggested that the royal family had been involved in secret intelligence operations that went far beyond their publicly acknowledged role during the war. "Kate, look at this," Thomas said, holding up a photograph that showed King George VI meeting with several men in military uniforms. "This appears to have been taken during the war, but I've never seen this photograph in any historical documentation." Kate examined the photograph carefully, noting the serious expressions on the faces of all the participants. The setting appeared to be somewhere within the palace, but not in any of the public rooms that were typically used for official meetings. "The back of the photograph has a date and location written in pencil," Kate observed. "It says this was taken in November 1943 in the secure conference room." "I've never heard of any secure conference room in the palace." Thomas checked the time and realized they had been in the hidden chamber for over 30 minutes. "We need to start thinking about getting back before the next security patrol," he said reluctantly. "But I don't want to leave all of this unexplored." Kate felt the same reluctance to leave their incredible discovery. The chamber contained more historical secrets than she had ever dreamed possible, and they had only scratched the surface of what was hidden there. At the same time, she knew they couldn't risk being caught during their unauthorized investigation. "We should document as much as we can quickly," Kate suggested, pulling out her smartphone to take photographs of some of the most significant documents and artifacts. "If we can gather enough evidence tonight, we can decide how to proceed with a more thorough investigation." Thomas agreed and began helping Kate photograph the most important items they had discovered. They focused on documents that provided clear evidence of the chamber's historical significance and the authenticity of the secrets it contained. As they prepared to leave the chamber, Kate noticed one more item that caught her attention. Sitting on a small table near the entrance was an ornate wooden box that appeared to be quite old. The box was decorated with the same crown and crescent moon symbol that had appeared on the mysterious letter and in the portrait upstairs. Kate opened the box carefully and found that it contained a collection of keys, each tagged with small labels indicating what they unlocked. One key was labeled Royal Library Illuminated Manuscript Collection, which immediately reminded Kate of the reference in the original letter. "This must be the key mentioned in the letter," Kate said excitedly. "The one that's supposedly hidden in an illuminated manuscript in the Royal Library." Thomas examined the key, which was made of an unusual metal that seemed to shimmer in the flashlight beam. "This doesn't look like any modern key I've ever seen," he observed. "The metal and craftsmanship appear to be quite old, possibly centuries old." Kate tucked the key into her pocket, thinking about their next steps. The discovery of the hidden chamber had exceeded their wildest expectations, but it had also raised countless new questions about the palace's history and the secrets that might still be hidden elsewhere in the building. As Kate and Thomas made their way back through the passage and up the stone steps, they both felt the weight of their incredible discovery. They had uncovered evidence of royal secrets that had been hidden for centuries, and they now faced the challenging question of what to do with this knowledge. The portrait swung back into place behind them with the same soft click they had heard when opening it, concealing the passage once again. To any casual observer, the blue drawing room appeared exactly as it always had, with no indication that it concealed one of the most significant historical discoveries in recent memory. Kate and Thomas stood in the elegant room for a moment, both struggling to process everything they had experienced. The adventure that had begun with a mysterious letter and Kate's collapse in the hallway had led them to uncover secrets that could potentially rewrite royal history. 2 weeks had passed since Kate and Thomas's discovery of the hidden chamber, and both of them had struggled to focus on their regular duties while processing the magnitude of what they had uncovered. They had met several times to discuss their findings and debate what they should do with the knowledge they now possessed. The photographs Kate had taken provided clear evidence of the chamber's existence and the historical artifacts it contained, but they both understood that revealing this information publicly could have serious consequences for their careers and the royal family. During this time, Kate had also used the ancient key they had found to access the illuminated manuscript collection in the royal library. Working during her lunch breaks and staying late after her regular duties, Kate had carefully examined dozens of medieval manuscripts looking for any connection to the crown and crescent moon symbol. Her patience had finally been rewarded when she discovered a 14th-century illuminated prayer book that contained a hidden compartment in its binding. Inside the compartment, Kate had found additional documents that provided even more details about the network of secret chambers beneath the palace. The documents included architectural plans, lists of artifacts stored in various locations, and correspondence between members of the royal family spanning several centuries. Most significantly, Kate had discovered that the hidden chambers were still being actively maintained and used by a secret society within the palace staff. This revelation had changed everything. Kate and Thomas realized that they were not simply exploring abandoned historical sites, but were instead uncovering an ongoing conspiracy that involved current palace employees. The implications were both exciting and terrifying, as they now understood that there were people within the palace who might view their investigation as a threat to carefully guarded secrets. On this particular evening, Kate was working alone in the Queen's private study, organizing correspondence that had accumulated over the past week. Mrs. Hartwell had left early for a family emergency, leaving Kate to complete the day's tasks by herself. The study was one of Kate's favorite rooms in the palace, filled with beautiful artwork and comfortable furniture that created an atmosphere of quiet elegance. As Kate sorted through the letters and documents, she noticed an envelope that immediately caught her attention. The paper was the same cream-colored stock as the mysterious letter that had started their entire adventure, and it bore the familiar crown and crescent moon symbol in the corner. However, this envelope was addressed specifically to her, Miss Kate Williams, Junior Lady-in-Waiting. Kate's hands trembled as she opened the envelope, wondering who could have known about her investigation and how they had gained access to the Queen's private correspondence. The letter inside was written in the same elegant handwriting style as the original letter, but the ink appeared to be much fresher, suggesting that it had been written recently. "Dear Miss Williams," the letter began, "your recent explorations have not gone unnoticed by those who have been entrusted with protecting the palace's most precious secrets. While we admire your dedication to historical preservation and your careful handling of sensitive materials, we must now invite you to join us in our sacred duty. Please come to the hidden chamber tomorrow evening at midnight and bring Guard Mitchell with you. It is time for you to learn the full truth about your role in our ancient order." The letter was signed with the same EM initials as the original, but below the signature was a detailed drawing of the crown and crescent moon symbol that seemed to shimmer on the page as if it had been drawn with metallic ink. Kate felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as she read the letter. The fact that someone within the palace knew about their investigation meant that they had either been much less careful than they thought, or they were dealing with people who had access to very sophisticated surveillance methods. At the same time, the invitation to join what appeared to be a secret organization was incredibly intriguing. Kate immediately contacted Thomas through the secure messaging system used by palace staff. She arranged to meet him in the green drawing room where they had first discussed their investigation, hoping that the familiar surroundings would provide some comfort as they dealt with this new development. When Thomas arrived, Kate could see that he was as nervous as she was about the mysterious invitation. They sat in the same chairs where they had first planned their adventure, but now they were facing the possibility that their investigation had brought them to the attention of forces within the palace that they didn't understand. "Do you think this could be a trap?" Thomas asked after reading the letter carefully. "If there really is a secret organization within the palace, they might see us as a threat that needs to be eliminated." Kate had considered the same possibility, but her academic instincts told her that the letter was genuine and that the invitation represented an opportunity rather than a threat. "The tone of the letter seems welcoming rather than threatening," she observed. "And if they wanted to stop our investigation, they probably would have done so already rather than inviting us to join them." Thomas nodded thoughtfully, but Kate could see that he was still concerned about the security implications of their situation. "If we accept this invitation, we'll be walking into a completely unknown situation," he pointed out. "We don't know how many people are involved in this organization or what their ultimate goals might be." Kate understood Thomas's concerns, but she also felt that they had come too far to turn back now. "We've already uncovered evidence that this secret organization has been operating for centuries," she said. "If they've been successfully protecting historical artifacts and documents for that long, then their intentions are probably legitimate." Over the next hour, Kate and Thomas debated the pros and cons of accepting the invitation. Both of them were curious about what they might learn from meeting with the secret organization, but they were also aware of the risks involved in becoming more deeply involved in palace conspiracies. Finally, Kate made the decision that would determine their fate. "I think we should accept the invitation," she said with conviction. "We've already committed ourselves to this investigation, and I believe we have a responsibility to see it through to its conclusion." Thomas looked at Kate with admiration for her courage and determination. "If you're willing to take this risk, then I'll stand by you," he said. "We've been partners in this adventure from the beginning, and I'm not going to abandon you now." The following evening, Kate and Thomas made their way to the blue drawing room at 15 minutes before midnight. The palace was even quieter than usual, with most of the staff having completed their duties hours earlier. The corridors seemed longer and more mysterious in the dim lighting, creating an atmosphere that was both magical and slightly ominous. As they activated the hidden mechanism and opened the passage behind the portrait, Kate and Thomas both felt a sense of déjà vu, mixed with anticipation for what they were about to discover. The stone steps seemed more familiar now, but they were still walking into unknown territory as they descended toward the hidden chamber. When they reached the bottom of the passage, Kate and Thomas were surprised to find that the chamber was illuminated with soft electric lighting, rather than the darkness they had encountered during their previous visit. The warm glow revealed details of the room that they had missed during their hurried exploration with flashlights. Standing in the center of the chamber were three people wearing elegant period costumes that appeared to be from the 18th century. The costumes were not theatrical props, but rather authentic historical garments that had been carefully preserved and maintained. The effect was both beautiful and slightly surreal, as if Kate and Thomas had stepped backward in time. The woman standing in the center of the group stepped forward to greet them. She appeared to be in her 50s, with silver hair arranged in an elegant style that complemented her historical costume. Her bearing and manner suggested someone accustomed to authority and respect. "Miss Williams and Guard Mitchell," the woman said with a warm smile. "Welcome to the Order of the Hidden Crown. I am Lady Margaret Thornfield, and I serve as the current Keeper of Secrets. These are my colleagues, Dr. K.A.S., James Hartwell, and Master Archivist Elizabeth Morrison." Kate was immediately struck by the surnames of their hosts. "Dr. Hartwell," she said with recognition. "Are you related to Mrs. Hartwell, my supervisor?" Hartwell, a distinguished gentleman with a gray beard, nodded with amusement. "Mrs. Hartwell is my sister," he confirmed. "She has been aware of our organization for many years, though she is not an active member. She was the one who identified you as a potential candidate for our order based on your academic background and dedication to historical preservation." Kate realized that her collapse in the hallway and the subsequent discovery of the mysterious letter had not been coincidental. Mrs. Croups Hartwell had apparently orchestrated the entire sequence of events to test Kate's character and determine whether she would be suitable for recruitment into the secret organization. Lady Thornfield gestured for Kate and Thomas to sit in comfortable chairs that had been arranged around a circular table in the center of the chamber. "You have many questions, I'm sure," she said kindly. "We will answer them all, but first we must explain the history and purpose of our order." Over the next 2 hours, Kate and Thomas learned the incredible story of the Order of the Hidden Crown. The organization had been founded in 1785 by Edward Morrison, the secret son of King George III, whose name had appeared on the original letter and throughout the documents they had discovered. Edward had been entrusted with protecting certain royal secrets that could potentially destabilize the monarchy if they were ever revealed to the public. The order had grown over the centuries to include carefully selected individuals from within the palace staff and the academic community. Members were chosen based on their discretion, integrity, and dedication to historical preservation. The organization's primary mission was to safeguard historical artifacts and documents that were too sensitive for public display, while also conducting research that contributed to scholarly understanding of royal history. The chamber you discovered is just one of several repositories we maintain throughout the palace and other royal properties, Lady Thornfield explained. We have preserved documents and artifacts that span more than 5 centuries of royal history. Some of these materials contain information that could be damaging to current members of the royal family, or could be misinterpreted by those with malicious intentions. Dr. Hartwell showed Kate and Thomas a detailed catalog of the artifacts and documents under the Order's protection. The scope of their collection was breathtaking, including everything from personal letters between monarchs to official documents that had been deliberately excluded from public archives. "We are not trying to hide history from the public," Elizabeth Morrison clarified. "Rather, we are ensuring that sensitive historical materials are properly preserved and studied by qualified scholars. Much of our research eventually contributes to legitimate historical publications, though we are careful to present our findings in ways that protect the privacy and dignity of the royal family." Thomas had been listening intently to the explanations, but he was particularly interested in the security aspects of the Order's operations. "How have you managed to operate within the palace for so long without being detected by modern security systems?" he asked. Lady Thornfield smiled at his practical question. "We have members within various departments of the palace administration," she explained. "This includes individuals in security, maintenance, and archival services. We have adapted our methods over the years to take advantage of new technologies while maintaining the secrecy that has protected us for centuries." Kate was fascinated by the scholarly aspects of the Order's work. "What kind of research projects are you currently undertaking?" she asked eagerly. Elizabeth Morrison led Kate to a section of the chamber where several scholars were working with historical documents under special lighting designed to prevent damage to fragile materials. "We are currently working on a comprehensive study of royal genealogy that will help resolve several historical debates about succession and legitimacy," she explained. "We are also researching the role of the monarchy during various political crises, using documents that have never been available to outside scholars." As the evening progressed, Kate and Thomas learned about the rigorous process involved in becoming full members of the Order. Candidates underwent extensive background checks and were required to demonstrate their commitment to the organization's principles through a series of tests and assignments. The process typically took several months and included training in historical research methods, document preservation techniques, and security protocols. "If you choose to join us," Lady Thornfield said, "your official duties at the palace would continue as before, but you would also be given access to our research facilities and archives. Kate, your expertise in art history would be invaluable for our ongoing projects related to royal portraits and decorative arts. Thomas, your security background would help us improve our protection of sensitive materials and locations." Kate felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect of gaining access to historical materials that no outside scholar had ever seen. The opportunity to contribute to genuine historical research while continuing her palace duties seemed like the perfect combination of her academic interests and professional responsibilities. Thomas was equally intrigued by the chance to play a role in protecting historically significant artifacts and documents. His security training had always focused on protecting people and property, but the idea of safeguarding irreplaceable historical materials for future generations gave his work a deeper sense of purpose. As their meeting came to an end, Lady Thornfield presented Kate and Thomas with ornate ceremonial pins featuring the crown and crescent moon symbol. "These will identify you as provisional members of the Order," she explained. "Take some time to consider our invitation. If you decide to join us permanently, there will be a formal initiation ceremony where you will take the oath that has bound our members together for more than 2 centuries." Kate and Thomas left the hidden chamber with their minds full of everything they had learned during their remarkable evening. The mystery that had begun with Kate's collapse in the hallway had led them to discover not just historical secrets, but an entire community dedicated to preserving and studying royal history. As they made their way back through the passage and into the blue drawing room, Kate and Thomas both understood that their lives had been forever changed by their adventure. They had uncovered secrets that few people in the world knew existed, and they had been invited to join an ancient order that carried on traditions stretching back centuries. The portrait of King Charles II swung back into place behind them, once again concealing the entrance to the hidden world below. But Kate and Thomas now knew that the elegant drawing room was much more than it appeared to be. It was a gateway to mysteries and discoveries that would keep them fascinated for years to come. Kate looked at the ceremonial pin in her hand, thinking about all the adventures that lay ahead as a member of the Order of the Hidden Crown. Her collapse in the hallway had seemed like a moment of weakness at the time, but it had actually been the beginning of the most exciting chapter of her life. Thomas smiled as he watched Kate's expression of wonder and anticipation. "So," he said quietly, "are you ready to officially become a keeper of royal secrets?" Kate nodded with determination and excitement. "I think this is exactly what I was meant to do," she replied. "Let's make history, one secret at a time." As they left the blue drawing room and returned to their normal lives, Kate and Thomas carried with them the knowledge that they had found their true calling. The Order of the Hidden Crown had given them the opportunity to combine their skills and interests in service of something much larger than themselves, the preservation of history for future generations. Their adventure had taught them that sometimes the most incredible discoveries come from the most unexpected circumstances, and that courage and curiosity can lead to opportunities that exceed even the wildest dreams.